Two men, two empires, two completely opposite codes of loyalty. Lucky Luciano built a criminal empire based on omerta, absolute silence, blind obedience, loyalty through fear. An unbreakable code that turned crime into a corporation. Sam Walton built the world's largest retail empire on a different kind of loyalty. Open doors, shared profits, mutual respect. A culture where every employee was a partner. Both created money-making machines. Both inspired extreme devotion in their teams. But only one of these codes built something that transcended its creator. Which one really works? Stay and find out. Section 1. Historical Context and Origins. New York, 1920. The streets of the Lower East Side swarmed with the sweat of thousands of Italian immigrants who had crossed the ocean seeking the American dream. But for many, that dream became a nightmare of poverty, discrimination, and daily survival. In that breeding ground, Salvatore Lucania was born, whom the world would know as Lucky Luciano. From childhood, Luciano understood a brutal truth. In his world, loyalty wasn't a moral value. It was a survival tool. Growing up on the streets meant belonging to something or being devoured by them. By 14, he had already formed his first gang. By 16, he already knew that the traditional rules of organized crime were obsolete. The Sicilian mafia operated under ancestral codes, family honor, limited territory, outdated methods. Luciano saw beyond that. He observed how American corporations functioned and had a revelation. Crime could be organized like a modern business. But he needed something to hold that structure together. Something stronger than blood ties. Something absolute. Omerta wasn't new, but Luciano refined it and turned it into the cement of his organization. It wasn't just about not talking to the police. It was a complete code. Unconditional loyalty to the criminal family. Absolute obedience to the hierarchy. Eternal silence about operations, and a golden rule. Betrayal was paid with life. There were no exceptions. There were no second chances. This code transformed street gangs into a synchronized criminal machine. Luciano established the Commission in 1931, a council that functioned like a corporate board of directors. 5 families. Defined territories. Conflict resolution through voting, not through wars. Everything sustained by omerta. Meanwhile, 900 miles away, in Kingfisher, Oklahoma, Samuel Moore Walton was born in 1918. His childhood unfolded during the Great Depression, an era that taught him the value of money, hard work, and community. Walton didn't grow up surrounded by violence, but he did grow up with scarcity. He saw his father lose his farm. He saw entire communities crumble. And he learned something fundamental. When people support each other, they can survive any crisis. After serving in World War II, Walton opened his first store in 1945, a Ben Franklin franchise in Newport, Arkansas. There he began experimenting with a radical idea for the time. What if employees were treated as partners? It wasn't idealistic romance. It was a strategic calculation. Walton observed that stores with committed employees sold more, had less turnover, and generated better ideas. But commitment couldn't be ordered, it had to be cultivated. He created the concept of associates instead of employees. He implemented profit sharing when nobody was doing it. He established an open-door policy where any worker could speak directly with him. He listened to floor employees because he understood they knew the customer better than any executive. When he founded Walmart in 1962, that code of loyalty was already in the company's DNA. It wasn't based on threats or fear. It was based on something more powerful, shared purpose and mutual benefit. 2 men. One forged in street violence, convinced that loyalty only worked under the shadow of threat. Another shaped by rural scarcity, convinced that genuine loyalty was born from respect and shared opportunity. Both were about to test their theories on a massive scale. And the business world would never be the same. SEC 2 and 2, Anatomy OF each code. Omerta wasn't simply keeping quiet. It was a complete system of organizational control designed to operate in the shadows. Luciano understood that to build a criminal empire, he needed something more sophisticated than casual threats. He needed a structure where loyalty was as predictable as a mathematical equation. The code worked in layers. At the base was absolute silence. Never cooperate with authorities. Never admit the organization's existence. never reveal names or structures. But on top of that existed a precise military hierarchy, the family boss at the top, below, the underboss, then the capos who controlled territories, after that, the soldiers who executed orders, and finally, the associates who aspired to enter. Each level knew exactly what they could do, what they should know, and with whom they could speak. Information flowed vertically, never horizontally. A soldier never questioned a capo's order. A capo never acted without the boss's authorization. This compartmentalization protected the structure. If a member fell, they could only betray their small portion of the empire. How was compliance guaranteed? Through a brutally clear system of incentives and punishments. The loyal ones ascended, gained lucrative territories, and received protection. Those suspected of disloyalty disappeared without trial or appeal. It didn't matter how many years you'd been in the family. It didn't matter how much money you'd generated. One betrayal, one doubt, one word too many, and you were history. This system generated extraordinary operational efficiency. For decades, the mafia moved millions in illegal gambling, prostitution, extortion, and trafficking without authorities being able to penetrate their structures. The commission resolved disputes between families without the bloody wars of the past. Luciano's code turned criminal chaos into a functional corporation. But it had fundamental cracks. Loyalty based on fear generates constant paranoia. Bosses distrusted their underbosses. Capos feared their soldiers would betray them to ascend, and each member knew that one mistake, one misinterpretation, could cost them their life. This systemic distrust eventually ate away at the structure from within. Now, 900 miles and a moral universe away, Sam Walton was building a radically different code. His system also had clear rules, but with an opposite philosophy. Instead of compartmentalization, it promoted transparency. Instead of fear, it cultivated purpose. Instead of blind obedience, it encouraged initiative. Walton implemented concrete policies that materialized his code. Profit sharing. From 1971, associates received participation in the company's profits. It wasn't charity, it was strategy. When a floor employee knew their extra effort translated into real bonuses, they worked differently. Open door policy. Any associate could bring ideas, complaints, or suggestions directly to managers, regardless of hierarchy. Walton personally visited stores constantly, spoke with floor employees, and listened to their observations. Many of Walmart's innovations were born from those conversations. Constant recognition. Walton understood that people don't just work for money. He implemented systems of public recognition, celebrations of achievements, and internal promotions. 80% of Walmart managers started as floor associates. That wasn't an accident, it was design. But his code also had costs. Maintaining this culture required constant leadership. You couldn't simply threaten someone into genuine commitment. You had to invest time, resources, and attention. Scaling this system to thousands of stores and millions of employees was exponentially more complex than maintaining a structure based on fear. 2 codes, 2 bets on human nature. Luciano bet that fear was the most reliable motivator. Walton bet that shared purpose generated better long-term results. Both built empires. But only one of those empires was designed to survive its founder. And that difference would change everything. Section 3. Direct comparison. Parallel cases. 1930, the Castellamarese War. The old mafia order was crumbling in a bloodbath. The traditional bosses, Masseria and Maranzano, fought for absolute control. Luciano saw the opportunity. He organized the assassination of both within months. His message was clear. Betrayal of the old system was necessary to build the new one. He eliminated whoever stood in the way. He consolidated power through surgical violence. Omerta was strengthened because everyone understood. Challenging the new structure meant death. 1979. Walmart faced its worst crisis. A wave of internal theft threatened profitability. The traditional solution would have been massive surveillance, exemplary firings, and a heavy hand. Walton chose the opposite. He called meetings with associates, asked what was failing, and heard that many felt disconnected from the company. He implemented more profit sharing, more communication, more recognition. The theft fell not from fear, but because employees stopped feeling alien to the company. The crisis revealed that his code worked even under pressure. Territorial expansion. Two opposite strategies. Luciano nationalized crime through the commission. He divided the country into territories controlled by 5 families. Each expansion required central approval, application of the same code, elimination of competitors. It grew fast because fear is efficient, but each new territory needed constant enforcement. Each new city meant more soldiers, more surveillance, more executions to maintain order. Walmart expanded store by store, meticulously replicating culture. Walton didn't just open locations, he trained managers in the complete philosophy. He personally visited new stores. He made sure each associate understood the code. It grew slower initially, but each new store reinforced the system instead of diluting it. By 1990, it operated 1,500 stores with the same culture as the first. Succession, the definitive test. 1936. Luciano was arrested and sentenced to 50 years. He directed operations from prison for a few years, but his physical absence weakened the code. The remaining bosses began to distrust each other. Without his unifying authority, the families returned to territorial wars. Omerta was maintained outward, but internally it fractured. The empire built on fear didn't survive without the one who imposed it. Sam Walton died in 1992. Walmart didn't collapse. It continued expanding because the code was institutionalized, not personalized. The values were in manuals, policies, and organizational culture. Thousands of managers had been trained in the philosophy. Profit sharing kept working. The open-door policy persisted. The empire built on shared purpose transcended its founder. Final human impact. Luciano's associates ended up dead, imprisoned, or fleeing. Walton's associates ended up millionaires with built careers, with real social mobility. Two codes faced the same tests: crisis, expansion, succession. One collapsed when its creator fell. The other strengthened precisely because it didn't depend on a single person. Imposed loyalty has an expiration date. Earned loyalty builds legacies. Section 4. Applicable liaisons. Two empires. Two codes. A perfect laboratory for understanding what really works in business? Because in the end, beyond the obvious moral differences, we're looking at two extreme organizational experiments. And the results speak for themselves. First lesson: loyalty isn't demanded, it's earned. Luciano could order loyalty. He could threaten, punish, eliminate. And it worked for decades. His soldiers followed orders without questioning. They maintained silence under interrogation. They protected the structure even at the cost of their lives. But that loyalty was transactional. I obey because if I don't, I die. Walton couldn't order genuine commitment. He couldn't force an employee to give innovative ideas or care for merchandise as their own. He had to create conditions where loyalty emerged naturally. And when he achieved it, he obtained something more valuable: people who protected the company because they felt the company protected them. For any leader, entrepreneur, or manager, the question is simple. Is your team loyal to you because they fear you or because they believe in what you're building together? The second option requires more effort, but generates exponentially superior results. Second lesson: fear works short-term, purpose works long-term. We can't deny the initial effectiveness of Omerta. During the 30s and 40s, the mafia operated with astonishing impunity. Fear generated discipline, secrecy, impeccable execution. But that system had an invisible expiration date, because fear generates compliance, not commitment. And when external pressure increased, when arrests multiplied, when the costs of maintaining the code exceeded the benefits, the system collapsed from within. Walmart's code was slower to show results. Training employees costs time. Listening to floor ideas requires patience. Sharing profits reduces immediate margins. But that system strengthened over time. Each year, more employees became evangelists of the culture. Each decade, the competitive advantage widened. By the year 2000, Walmart was the world's largest company, not despite its code, but precisely because of it. Third lesson: a team united by values beats a team united by threats. Luciano's commission functioned through constant enforcement. Each meeting was an evaluation of loyalties. Each decision required subsequent surveillance. Organizational energy was consumed in internal control as much as external operations. And when legal pressures increased, That internal distrust accelerated disintegration. Walmart's teams united around shared objectives: serve the customer, reduce costs, grow together. That alignment generated spontaneous innovation. An employee noticed an inefficiency and reported it because they knew improving the company directly benefited them. 1,000 small daily optimizations, multiplied by hundreds of thousands of employees, created a machine of continuous improvement. Fourth lesson: transparency builds empires, secrecy destroys them. Ironically, the secrecy that protected the mafia for decades ended up being its strategic weakness. Compartmentalization prevented good soldiers from becoming informed leaders. Decisions were made with limited information. Innovation was impossible because nobody saw the complete picture. Walmart operated with radical transparency for its time. Sales numbers were shared with store managers. Corporate strategies were explained to associates. This openness created an army of problem solvers who understood the business deeply. Fifth lesson: legacy is measured by what remains when you leave. Luciano ended up deported, directing a decaying empire from Italy. He died in 1962, watching his structure fragment. The five families continued to exist, but never recovered the cohesion of their early years. His legacy was a system that didn't survive its creator. Walton died knowing he had built something greater than himself. Today, 3 decades later, Walmart employs 2 million people, generates $500 billion annually, and maintains its founder's fundamental principles. The question for any leader isn't whether you can build an empire. It's whether that empire can exist without you. Because in the end, both men succeeded in building massive organizations. But only one built something that transcended his own existence. And that difference defines everything. It's closing and final reflection. The same challenge, opposite solutions. Luciano chose the path of absolute control. Threats, silence, blind obedience. He built a criminal empire that worked brilliantly until it stopped working. And when it collapsed, it left nothing but ruins and destroyed lives. Walton chose the path of shared purpose. Respect, transparency, mutual benefit. He built a commercial empire that continues growing 3 decades after his death. And in the process, he created millions of jobs and transformed entire economies. The lesson isn't that doing things right always wins. History is full of people who chose the wrong path and prospered temporarily, and others who did everything right and failed. The lesson is deeper. The type of loyalty you build determines not only immediate success, but what remains after the founder. You can force obedience and get quick results. But those results have an expiration date. Or you can invest in building genuine commitment, knowing the fruits will take longer but will last generations. In business, as in life, the code you choose defines your legacy. Omerta built an empire of shadows that faded with the light. Walmart's loyalty built a machine that keeps working because thousands of people believe in it. What kind of leadership do you want to exercise? What kind of team do you want to build? What do you want to remain when you're no longer there? If this analysis generated reflection on leadership and teams, subscribing to the channel is the next step. Here we explore these contrasts every week: opposite strategies, confronted philosophies, lessons you can apply in any business. Leave your opinions in the comments. Do you know companies that operate closer to Omerta or the Walmart model? What code do you observe in your industry? See you in the next video.